Good day, everybody, and welcome to Opinion Nation, where I give you my opinion and you share yours. As you can see, I am not necessarily showing my face at the moment, because I just feel that it's probably more interesting for you to have a bit of different visuals on the channel, or at least on the screen whilst you're listening to my voice. As I've always said, my ugly mug's not much to look at. But anyway, this is a short video because I can't shut up about it, because it is just shows how the whole world is going to pot. I can't understand it. But I saw on the news the other day, they were actually holding an interview with somebody who was saying that they should remove Nelson's column because apparently it shows approval for white supremacy, and you know, like in the Charlottesville, it's demeaning to the minorities and people who suffered under slavery, etc., etc. And apparently there's loads of other statues in London that need to come down. I mean, the news did not necessarily report it particularly favourable for taking it down, but I'm just flabbergasted that they bothered to report it at all, because are people like going out of their mind? What sort of planet are they from? Obviously, hundreds of years ago, yes, there was slavery, and yes, there was, you know, technically oppression of some of the other races and nations. But that's called history. Now, Nelson's column was erected to celebrate a person that fought and died for this country, technically speaking, to keep this country the way it is, that ultimately evolved into the country it is today, where everybody is equal and, you know, there's no slavery. I mean, it was the English that really pioneered to have slavery removed. But you have to realise, in history, there were different values and things that were happening. So, you know, it's not... it wasn't that Nelson would have been consciously a white supremacist, which is a sort of thing that they're suggesting. He was brought up where, you know, there was the British Empire, and the British were socially more advanced, and they were, how shall I put it, spreading the religion and other parts of its culture that could benefit people. That's how they thought. Now, the way they did it and what they did, you know, yes, by today's values, you cannot condone it. But that's what happened. But, you know, to start removing a statue like that just because in your opinion, he's a white supremacist is ridiculous. That is part of history. He was a hero of this nation at the time for most of the people, and that enabled this nation to become what it is today, where that particular person is able to actually say these things. Because if we still thought the way we did 200-300 years ago, that person would not have the right to go up and say such ridiculous things. But thankfully, because we are British and we have evolved, that's the point, our culture has evolved over time. But it does not detract from the fact that at that time, Lord Nelson fought and died to beat the French and Spanish navies at the Battle of Trafalgar, that ultimately prevented them invading this country, which could have had long-term consequences that could have been far worse for these oppressed peoples at the time. And also the other thing people don't seem to mention is actually on that statue, in the friezes around it, the small carvings around it, there are actually depictions of African sailors. Right? Because there were African sailors who, whilst they were sailors on board the ship, were as equal as any other sailor. They were treated exactly the same. And the same cannot be said for other navies, such as probably the US navies at the time. No. But in this statue immortalizes the fact that even the people from the colonies and African peoples were actually there helping to preserve the British way of life and the British Empire. And they would have been treated exactly the same. When they retired, they would have been looked after the same as any other sailor. Although they might probably say, no, they weren't. Well, I disagree. Because if you go down to Greenwich, nearby me, there's a maritime museum. And it actually shows that all people that served were treated the same. So I find it a bit difficult that you could say that Nelson is a white supremacist, when on his own ship he had African sailors who were not slaves. They were their own men. They chose, for the most part, I mean, you do hear about press gangs and stuff like that, but that happened to both black and white, I should imagine. But at least they were serving as free men. And when they were finished, they would get paid the same, and if there was any booty captured, they would get the same percentage of it. There was no white supremacy on that ship at that time. So, you know, that's absolute bullcrap. And I cannot believe that people can even be entertaining airtime to such ridiculous thoughts as, let's remove these statues, let's take down a Nelson's column, let's take down Churchill, let's, you know, what next? It's history, it's our history, it's British history. You know, we're not going to go to immigrate to Saudi Arabia and start saying, well, let's take down that statue or this statue because they were slave traders or something like that. It's rubbish. It's British history. If you are in this country, and this person that was talking there, she was British. Okay, yes, of African descent, but she was British. She had she was born here and everything like that. It's part of her history. Her people have been welcomed in previously, and they have become British. And there's no difference, technically speaking, between her or me, right? Or anyone else out there. That's part of their British history. And I am sorry, but especially as far as Nelson goes, I do not believe that he was consciously a white supremacist. He was a man of his times, and the times have changed, and that's why we have history books, and that's why we read over these history books, and that's why we look back at history, so that we don't necessarily repeat history. If you start hiding it because it does not conform to your current ideals, then we are never going to learn, and we're just going to be listening to a one-track narrative that is set out by ridiculous liberal wishy-washy snowflakes. And I'm sorry, but if this was ever seriously considered, that would be a reason to protest, and I would say more. And I think that this woman should not have been allowed to be given the airtime to even suggest such a thing. Apparently she's some sort of university graduate that's a publisher and a journalist or something like that. Either she was doing this just to get on television, or she's just a damn idiot. And that's what I think. Right? Leave the history alone. The statues are British, and they belong to this country, and we are proud of the history that we have built up, and we are proud of the good things that this country has done, and we learn from the bad things that this country has done, and these statues and things like it remind us of the good and the bad, and we hope that we will evolve socially to become better people and a better nation. So there's my little rant over with. This is just something that I feel very strongly about, and I should hope that you do too. some of these liberal wishy-washy snowflakes will probably think that I'm a white supremacist now. Well, I'm sorry, that's not further from the truth, but that's their opinion. But I'm just saying that their opinion is crap. Anyway, this is me and Opinionation signing off, and hope to talk again soon. Bye.